into the shadow box. Today we have with us Lakendra Weaver. This is our lady that's going to be, this is actually episode 6. And Lakendra brings a whole different aspect to grief. She brings a whole different aspect to the relational portion of grief that we're going to talk about today. So, Lakendra is a licensed professional counselor here in the Dallas area. She focuses on cognitive behavioral therapy, also dialectical behavioral therapy, and emotional freedom technique, which I really want to hear about that, Lakendra. Lakendra has her degree from Dallas Baptist University, and she provides an environment that's non-judgmental, which we all need, especially when it comes to culture and us just getting into the habit of seeing people for our mental health needs. Also, Lakendra is trained in, she's a trauma informed trainer as well. So she deals with people who, have experienced trauma and people who actually need to process it. So when that trauma informed, meaning that she knows about the trauma and she knows how to kind of pull some things out of you that's necessary to get you to that next level of your processing and functional levels. So, Lakendra, go ahead and just tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brings you into the grief world.
So I think you did a really good job at just really summing it up. But just to add, I am the owner of Embrace to Empower. We specialize in a lot of the things that Carlisa has already named, anxiety management, family issues, just to talk about the emotional freedom technique. Very powerful tool because it helps us to process different feelings. So we go through tapping different points of our bodies in order to move certain feelings around. So very powerful tool. And I look forward, I'll tell you more about it later.
I actually love that. I do, I'm a Reiki practitioner. And so
Yeah.
when you speak about the aspect of moving energy around and being able to move those emotional fields around so that you can create room to process, like that's where it's at right there because it's all bottled up. And we know that our body in certain areas, depending on where the trauma is or where the emotional baggage is located, it's actually houses itself in different parts of our bodies. And
Right.
so what you do there is like I love it. That's in my wheelhouse.
Absolutely. It's a very good tool to use. I teach a lot of my clients how to use it.
Awesome. So
Yes.
tell me, Lakendra, tell me what brings you into the world of grief.
So, what brings me into the world of grief is, I mean, first off, God, because I feel like every client that God has put, I guess, in my practice or someone for me to have the privilege of working with, there's a level of grief that comes with just being in this field, right? And so, also, my own personal experience, I've experienced grief in different ways. We just have to understand that grief is not just the death or the loss of someone in that way, but it's also any type of loss, whether that's a relationship or friendship, job, finances, any type of loss that creates a space of or emptiness. And so I think just helping my clients, helping myself get through the different processes and stages of grief, it I don't know, it's just a passion that has been created. It was ignited, and so I just went for it.
Yeah, and that's
That's
what made me interested in you as well because you put that focus on that grief is not just something that's connected to the death of a loved one. You are
Mhm.
when you lose any part of yourself, whether like you said, if it's in a job or relationship, that is still something that you have to get used to being without. And that is what
Yeah.
grief actually brings to us. We're getting used to what is no longer there. We're getting used to a part of ourselves that we've gotten to know but no
Mhm.
longer serves us for our future, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I love that you bring that aspect in it. When we talked before, we were talking about how important emotional support is, and that
Yeah.
is really in your wheelhouse. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. So emotional support is almost mandatory.
Hmm.
There's different ways that you can get that emotional support. And I know at times there's a struggle with a level of vulnerability, right? Like, I don't need anyone, I don't need any help, things like that. But getting through any type of grief, emotional support is definitely. Almost like I said, it's almost a requirement. It's mandatory. Rather you're getting that support from church, you're getting that support from your family or friends, you're getting that support from a licensed professional. Reach out because you don't have to go through it alone. We're not made to go through things alone. We're human, so we need connection, right? And so going through depression, going through anxiety, things like that, we need help and support. There's people in this world that's trained, me example, to help you through that, right? If you also have, like family and friends that's there to help you, go to them, put the pride and the ego to the side and go for it. Get help, ask for help. It's okay. It's healthier to ask for help than to go through this process by yourself.
Yeah, I love that you said get help and that it's okay, because
Yeah.
those emotions, especially say when it comes to men or when it
Mhm.
comes to African Americans, people of color, those emotions are really, sometimes they're deemed as weak. Sometimes
Yeah.
they're deemed as, this is something that is within our family and we don't do that, so there's a big stigma when it comes to mental health and going to see someone when it comes to your emotions. And,
Right.
emotions are those feelings because, I think people get all of these words mixed up and think that it's just one whole thing, but your emotions are coming from feelings. Emotions are things that you're acting out, whether if you're crying or if you have physical things that are coming out because of your feelings. Your anxiety is acting up in your belly. You're throwing up. You got a headache. It's like all of these things that are going on with you, and we forget that these emotions are meant to be processed. They're not meant to just be stuck there. Not, they're not meant just to say, hey, they'll eventually go away. Even if
Hmm.
you are a person who doesn't need to talk extensively about it, at least getting it out initially so you can hear yourself helps you to create that space again to process it, to filter it out and say, well, hey, why am I feeling like that? Why
Yeah.
am I crying every morning? Why do I feel like I have this nervous stomach, at nighttime? Because there's a part of you that you're losing, that you're trying
Hmm.
to hold on to, that you can't fully process.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely. There's like this fear, I guess, of judgment.
Hmm.
There's this feeling of a personal weakness, maybe,
Yeah,
that if I seek out help, I'm not strong anymore,
yeah,
right? And so that being said, we think about if we have a cavity, we go to the dentist, right? If I break my leg, I'm gonna go to the doctor,
right.
right? So when we have needs, we have resources that we can tap into to get those needs addressed.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
emotions or feelings, or especially when they're on one side of the spectrum and they're just truly truly farther out there, it's like a canker sore.
Yeah.
It just continues to grow and get deeper and get more infected, and then you're wondering, like, well, why do I find myself not going outside? Why am I
Yeah.
always in my bed? Why am I not able to even communicate
Yeah.
properly to those who are around me?
Right.
So getting those emotions out are totally worth it, and
Yeah.
especially for your mental stability.
Hmm. Yeah.
That mental stability, people think that just surviving things and kind of just going about your life and letting things happen and then, oh, I'll just get over it. It's like these
Hmm.
things have an imprint on you,
They
and
do.
they embed themselves in you in such a way where you think that you've gotten over that hump, but come into a relationship and you are like, you're out of your mind because you're like, I have not dealt with this.
Yeah.
These are triggers that are coming up for me, and
Yeah.
it's because you didn't deal with it when it initially happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's this phrase, and it's called we bury and we date our unfinished business, right? So
Mm,
take time to truly process those feelings and those emotions that do come with grief or whatever it may be, right?
mhm.
We're going to take that into our relationships.
Yeah,
We're going to
definitely.
deal with it one way or another.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah. And it's one of those aspects where it's not that it's not going to come up, right? Because it's there. It's happened already. But how you deal with it. How do you stop yourself, step back objectively and stop yourself before you react to this situation? Am I
yeah.
responding or am I reacting? And
Hmm.
that's my two R's right there, because it can make a world of difference. It will make
Yeah.
or break anything, really.
True.
when
Very true.
you when you started thinking about the realm of just kind of, and it really comes to emotional intelligence too. So
Yeah.
when it comes to the emotional support that you really figure like people really need this, like this is something that people are lacking, and
Mhm.
it does affect everything that you do. How did you come about that within yourself? Like, did you have an experience that kind of brought that out for you?
Yeah. I believe because for me, for a long time, I personally had a difficult time with vulnerability, right? I had this level of hyper independence, which is a norm pattern that I'm really seeing, right? And so, um, having people around me who's constantly checking on me, even when, I'm like, no, 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 I'm fine. But that consistency of them continuing to check on me all through, throughout that time, it gave me a space to be able to say, you know what, I'm not fine, right?
Right.
And go and get that support. Also, finding support in the church,
Yeah.
right? Rather that's through a group support, a single
Hmm.
women's ministry group, or whatever group that may be available in whatever situation that you may be in at that time. So for me, I think yeah, definitely took a level of emotional intelligence. Yeah,
Yeah. And those groups, I mean, you're speaking to people who speak your language. And
yeah,
that's another reason that I did this podcast, because it's like, when you're talking to people who don't really understand, or they haven't been through it yet, or, things are just foreign to them, it makes you feel like you have to kind of put yourself in a box and you can't really express yourself. So that's when people just start to shut down,
yeah,
and not seek out that support. But when you
yeah,
put yourself in a group of people, where it's like, oh, I'm not the only one who has experienced this. I'm not the only one who thinks this way.
yeah,
I'm not the only one that's had certain experiences that shaped me to feel and think and be this way. And
right.
it just gives people more courage, to know
Hmm.
that there's more people like them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see here. So let's talk about empathy and affection, and
Okay.
how the lack of emotional support can show up in relationships. That How the lack of emotional support can show up in relationships in the way of affection and empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think back about, if you know anything about attachment styles,
Hmm.
right, that stems all the way back to childhood.
Yeah.
So a child who may not have had um, affection
Hmm.
or just emotional support when they're younger, right? It can show up in their relationship. So at this point, I'm not comfortable being extremely vulnerable with you, right? It may create an extra, um, I guess we need like extra emotional reassurance in
Yeah.
our relationship, right? It creates maybe a hyper independence, like, no, I got this, I don't need anybody type of attitude. And so, a lack of emotional support and empathy when we're younger, or it can also create, what do you call it? A misplaced dependency. So
Yeah.
now in my relationship, I am depending on that person to provide me with certain things that I did not receive when I was younger, right? But it may be to a level of where another person can give that to you. I have to
Hmm.
deal with that myself, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel like it will show up in your relationship.
Yeah. Took one of those attachment style tests, and I was like, oh no, I'm not letting nobody know about this, because
Yeah.
it was kind of surprising. But what people, it was surprising, but it wasn't surprising, because
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I can get that. But when you're giving that information to someone else, or you're wondering like, how am I really showing up? That's
Hmm.
that part in there where it's like, okay, have you healed from that? Are you still
Yeah.
showing up in that way?
Hmm.
Because when you see a therapist and you kind of go through these different stages of your healing, it's
Yeah.
like you have to make sure that you're not still there in a space that you were in, and that you
Right.
have kind of grown out of some things, and not let tests like the tests like those particular tests, or just the levels of things that you're going through, put you in a space that you're not in anymore, right?
Right.
So that particular test made me really like Made me look at myself like, oh. But
Yeah,
and I think that people doing those sorts of tests and
mhm,
assessments on themselves, I think is very, very important. You know,
very.
especially if you've been working on yourself, and especially if you're trying to meet a mate, or if you're in a relationship with someone and you just aren't seeing eye to eye, or
Yeah,
things are just kind of happening, and you're like, well, what? Why am I not getting fed? And why do they feel like they're not getting fed? Maybe we're not speaking each other's language, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and that's another thing I want you to hit on too is the relationship of language when people are in relationship when they lack emotional support.
yeah,
When they don't know how to be emotional, either they're overly emotional or they just have none whatsoever. Like,
right.
how do you as a therapist, how do you teach them how to speak each other's language when those issues are there?
Well, first, I think it comes to a place of connection, right? You have to connect with that person. And so you have to give them a space to where it's okay to show emotions. And sometimes people just need permission, to be honest. They just need permission because maybe in the past they were not met with acceptance when they showed that emotion, right? And
Yeah,
so I think it also comes to making sure that we understand those emotions because once I understand that emotion, kind of where it is rooted from, right? I can now own it, and once I own it, I can identify certain triggers, right, that may bring on this certain type of emotion.
yeah,
And so I really think it stems from giving that permission, um, having people to hear that, and then also having them to accept that and become more comfortable in being that vulnerable with sharing that emotion, showing that appreciation. Like, because to me, vulnerability, it goes two ways. First off, I have to truly trust you and honor you in a certain way, right, to be vulnerable with you. And then for someone to give that vulnerability to me and consider me that safe space for them, whether that's a friend, a client, a family member, I take honor in that.
yeah.
I take pride in that, right? Because it took a lot for you to look at me as someone that is that safe space for you to land.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I'm listening to some of the words that you're saying as far as like acceptance and vulnerability. And
yeah,
when we had spoken before, we were talking about how we grieve the things that we've never had. And
yeah,
those are the things that we show up needing in relationships. And those are the things that we're just like, you know, you're begging for this and you're asking for this in so many ways. You're acting out because you're not getting it. And
yeah,
it's like you never had it to even know what it looks like.
right,
You never had it to know what the healthy way of doing a particular or feeling a particular way. Talk to me a
right.
little bit about that.
So, grieving what we never had. So, I think whenever we are around individuals, right, and we see a norm, for example, a child who may not have ever had a mom or dad present in their life,
Hmm.
right? They know from people around them, hey, I'm supposed to have a mom and dad. I'm supposed to have this type of relationship. So at this point, it creates an emptiness, it creates a void. So although I've never experienced that mom and dad relationship, because I know that it exists and it is now an idea, I can grieve for that now. That's a different level of grief, right? Or a different type of grief. So now I'm longing for something that I never had.
Yeah,
I'm grieving it because I desire it and I want that,
yeah.
right? And so I put that in the category of grief as well. We can definitely grieve what we never had.
Yeah, and it's yes, it is those ideas of things, those ideas of family, that idea of what a connection is supposed to look like. But when
Right.
you're grieving from a soul's level of
Hmm.
what you know is supposed to be like, why haven't I been loved like that?
Yeah.
Why don't I have those feelings?
Right.
Why don't I have those sorts of interactions with people that I see that are in these unions
Hmm.
or in these establishments where it's all of these little intricate pieces that seem to really fit for them or seem to really enjoy. So here I am wondering what's missing in me because
Hmm.
I don't get those feelings of what I see or perceive those feelings to be from an outside, from looking at a family or looking at someone in a relationship. And
Absolutely.
I think that that's one of those parts of where people really have to get into themselves
Mhm.
and really cipher out those emotions, cipher out those feelings. What is it that you see that you feel that you should be feeling?
Right.
What do you think that you're missing?
Right.
Is it the hugs and the kisses? Is it the way that you think that those things make you feel?
Right.
What is it? The acceptance? Is it
Mhm.
the part of belonging? And that's one of the biggest things, like belonging and integration. You know,
Mhm.
those are the bigger things that people are missing out of when they're like, I want that,
Right.
or I don't know why I want it, but because you want to belong to something. And most
Yeah.
likely, like you said, from way back in childhood, something was missing.
Yeah.
Something was missing, and you didn't get that connection, and you're
Yeah.
searching for a connection and that's another thing too, where people end up being codependent on other people for the
Mhm.
wrong reasons and in the wrong way, because
Yeah.
they don't know what that connection again is supposed to look like or what it's supposed to feel like.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback on what you just said, this is why therapy is so mandatory, right? Because those are unmet needs.
Yeah.
And so again, if I have these unmet needs, it's considered unfinished business. And I'm going to take that into my friendships. I'm going to take that into my relationships. I may even take it into my work.
Yeah.
It impacts us in ways that you wouldn't even expect because I wasn't aware. And so, what therapy does, it puts a light on those unmet needs. It teaches us how we need to how we can show up even with those unmet needs,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes those unmet needs, yeah, I may not be able to replace a person, right, that then meet those needs, but maybe I can do it for myself now.
Hmm.
We can create a plan for that. And so I think once again, grieving what you never had, sometimes we don't even know that we never had it. We're just showing up in the world in a certain way that's not healthy because we don't realize, hey, like I have an unmet need that I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah.
But I'm taking that and I'm dragging that and I'm trailing it all through these other parts of my life.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
also where therapy comes into play is, giving people a voice to that. Like letting
Yeah.
them know that it's okay if you express that. It's okay
Right.
for you to know how to express it. Because a
Hmm.
lot of the times we enter into these situations and we're like kids coming in. Kids throw temper tantrums. Kids they're doing all these things because they need this particular attention. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, because you've never been shown how to articulate it. You've never
Yeah.
been shown to even know what you're really, like you said, what you're looking for. And
Right.
so therapy, of course, is going to help you be able to show up and say, hey, this is what I need. This is what I expect. This is what I can compromise on. This is what's going to make me feel good.
Yeah.
This is kind of who I am and what I need. Can
Right.
you meet me in this space? Can you compliment me in this space? You
Right.
know, so that kind of brings me around to what you actually do and the grit of what you do, because you deal with relational grief, and that
Hmm.
is something that's huge, something that we all go through, right? Talk to
Right.
me, tell me what you do in that space.
With relationship grief, I think my main target and focus with that would be addressing again those unmet needs, right? Or making my clients aware of certain needs that maybe that they were getting in their relationship or things that they were not getting in their relationship. Walking them through the process and providing different tools to help them throughout that time because right now we're in the holiday season,
Yeah.
right? We are 2 days off from Christmas. For a lot of people, that was a hard time. This is still a hard time. And so I provide a safe space. I provide a place where, hey, it's okay, right? It's okay to grieve through this. Let's figure out some ways that I can support you through this healing because at some point, if you don't get help, you're going to crash,
Oh yeah.
right? Going to crash. And so what I do, I help my clients with just the providing them tools, managing the different emotions that comes with grieving a relationship or a friendship that may even be establishing certain type of boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And so those are some things that I work in with my clients or
Yeah.
work through with my clients.
Share with me a couple of tools that you use with your clients to get them to establish those boundaries.
Whether that's journaling, video diaries, how we said, how I stated earlier, just giving a space of vulnerability. Like it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to express yourself. Empty chair technique,
Hmm.
um, mindfulness with meditation,
Okay.
right? Affirmations. There's a lot of different tools. I can't give them all out right now today,
You
but
gotta say some of the secrets.
that's a few.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about this analogy that you gave me about the superhero and the villain. Talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
Superhero and the villain. All right. So let's see the best way to describe this. So when it comes to a superhero and a villain, right? Let's say I'm in a relationship, okay?
Hmm.
An unhealthy relationship. That person can be my superhero because they can make my day, right? They can make me happy. When I'm hurt, they can help me, but also it can be a villain, right? That person can be a villain. So the same person that is my superhero can also be my villain. So now I'm looking for the superhero to show up in a space where the villain has hurt me, right?
Yeah,
So as the villain and the superhero, it's hard when it's the same person,
yeah,
right? So if you can look at your relationship or a friendship or even a family member, right? If this person hurts you, but you're also looking for that person to help to heal you, you kind of got to look at it like, is this really healthy,
yeah,
right? Sometime in a relationship, friendship, family, they're going to hurt you on accident, right? It's going to be an accident because I mean we're not perfect humans. So if someone hurts you by accident, okay, that's fine. But if someone is consistently hurting you, they're consistently being that villain, but you're going to them to help heal you, and you're looking at them as, but this is also my superhero. That's kind of a dual role that's not healthy. Does
yeah,
that make sense? Like it's not healthy. So
yeah. It
that's
totally makes sense.
yeah, yeah. So you kind of have to look at like the superhero and the villain. Look at it almost like a measuring tool,
Mm,
right? Am I going to this villain to help me through? Am I looking at them as my superhero and my villain? That's not good.
yeah.
It's un-
And that kind of makes me think about what we were just talking about as well of you not knowing. You know, you enter into these relationships and you enter into some looking for something, but you don't know the level of toxicity that you're supposed to take. You know, and
right,
toxicity, I guess that's the wrong word for it, but you know, you don't have a meter on it, basically.
right,
You know, what's normal getting wear and tear of getting to know someone, understanding the relationship, understanding their love language, understanding their moods and swings and this, that, and the other. But
yeah,
what price am I paying at that? Am I paying
right,
a price with my soul? Am I paying a price with my staying up and my tears? Am I paying a price by putting myself to the back burner?
right.
And so I totally understand that superhero and that villain. And it makes me think of Judas. You
Yeah,
know, it makes me
yeah,
think of Judas because for a while, you know, Jesus didn't know that Judas was his enemy. You
yeah,
know, Judas probably didn't even know he was his enemy for a minute.
right,
You know,
yeah,
but it's like that person that's kissing you one day and the
yeah,
person who's stabbing you in the back the other day, and it's just
hmm,
like wow.
yeah,
So here we go, meeting a therapist to get you through that because that is that's a disparity in yourself, you know, in
yeah,
your self love, in your self worth, and
yes,
then you don't trust yourself because you're like, how did I not know, you know,
hmm,
how didn't I pick up on the villain because this
yeah,
person was showering me with kisses and hugs and you know all this stuff.
yeah.
um so I totally love that analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And you think about again, we go back to those unmet needs, right? Or that misplaced dependency.
yeah,
So if you're the person that I'm depending on to fill in an unmet need that maybe I did not receive in my childhood, because I'm depending on you so much, it's hard for me to look at you as a villain. It's hard for me to look at you as that person that's also hurting me
yeah,
because you're also healing me. And so, yeah, like you said, that's why therapy is important, because therapy is here to hold up a mirror and say, hold on, like, this is
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And the further that you dig back, I know we talked about a little bit of that shadow work as well. And the further
Yeah.
that you dig back, especially when it comes to everybody, if you didn't have a good childhood, if you didn't have parents that were showing up for you, or if you were a young lady that didn't have a father that was showing up for you or wasn't really present, then you
Yeah.
go into the world looking for that father. You go
Absolutely.
into that because, and if you had a father at home or a mother at home that you know, was that villain and that superhero, then you
Mm.
think it's normal.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're supposed to be looking for. And so
Right.
there goes that shadow. It just comes along with you and it overshadows everything. And you wonder why you're always broken,
That's
because you've been broken from way back then and you were
right.
looking for something that you didn't know what the feeling was supposed to be. And
Right.
here you go in these relationships where you're repeating patterns of unknown sources,
Yeah.
things that you didn't think of, right? So when we think
Absolutely.
about family,
Mhm.
we have these stigmas. We have the stigma. We have these cultural unspoken stigmas that go on. Tell me what you see within your own practice with this.
Well, sometimes it's, individuals who don't want, others to know that they're in therapy,
Hmm.
right? Because they may be looked at as, they're being judged.
Yeah.
Also, what I have noticed is a lot of times the reason why we're in therapy is sometimes because of the people around us,
Yeah.
right? And so, I think one of the stigmas, I guess we could call it, is the people that really need to be in therapy are those that brought you to therapy. But because they don't believe in therapy, right? It's almost like the work you're doing, it's also isolating you, because now I'm seeing I'm seeing the chaos. I'm seeing the chaos because I done stepped outside of that. I done did my healing, right? And so, um, I'm really starting to see more people though coming to therapy. Whether that's ethnicity,
Hmm.
gender, age. I'm starting to see a lot more
Hmm.
acceptance when it comes to to therapy, which is
Yeah.
really great. But we still have a lot of work to do, because there's a lot of I guess parents, right, or just older in the older
Yeah.
generation, that because therapy was not as normalized as it is today, they're refusing to come.
Hmm.
And sometimes me as a person, I need you to go to therapy, right? Because that's going to help me in our relationship.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's I love the fact that you spoke about the older generation because
Mhm.
I am starting to see even in my coaching and things, I start to see people who are well in up in age that are like, some of these ways that I've been conditioned to believe, and it's been over a long period of time about
Mhm.
myself or just perspectives that I have is really not true. And so here
Mhm.
I am, I've gotten into my 70s and I'm wondering who the heck I am and why
Right.
am I showing up in relationship the way that I'm showing up? Because this
Yeah.
is all I've ever known, and
Right.
it does take a sense of courage to break out of those norms, break out
Mhm.
of, the norms of what your culture is, the norms of what your family says, because a lot of those secrets were secrets for a reason because they were too painful. And so now
Yeah.
it goes down the generation and you're carrying all this pain and all
Right.
these secrets. And it's just like, how
Yeah.
do I do this? And
Mhm.
so a lot of the times when I work with my clients and I have them write letters to people who won't show up. I have them
Right.
write letters from people that they've really kind of tried to put under the back burner. And
Yeah.
I tell them like, you're not doing this for them. You're doing
Yeah.
this for you. You are
Right.
not wondering if they're going to show up at your door,
Right.
give you an explanation, give you an apology, or any of that. You are writing these letters in order to separate yourself from the pain and to get to for you to express yourself out of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I love the way that you said, sometimes the chaos is around us. The people who need the therapy don't go get it. But
Right.
a lot of the times when people are in those particular situations, they feel like they can't heal if the other people don't heal or if the other
Right.
people don't validate them. And it's like, no, we got to pull you away from that and separate you from that so that
Yeah.
you can go on to your journey in a way that's more self-sufficient for you, so that you don't keep carrying these generational traumas with you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think, like you said, it's really helping that person process whether that individual that's impacting them, whether they go to therapy or not, right? Whether they take accountability or not, being able to truly just make peace, right? Make peace with it so that I can continue to move on with my life.
Yeah.
But we think about cultural, if we go back to the question of cultural stigmas,
Hmm.
um, it's definitely, I say, older generations that
Yeah.
don't, that it's not, it's still not a normalized thing,
Yeah.
right? But, and that don't take away from people who are in therapy trying to heal, because it's still what you did and you didn't take accountability for it is still impacting me,
Yeah.
right? But again, we got to just get to a place where we have to work through that and say, okay, rather that's setting a boundary with that person, like you said, writing a letter to that
Hmm.
person is really good. And I'm not forgiving you or excusing your behavior or what you did to me. I'm forgiving you for myself,
Yeah.
right? So I won't continue to hold on to any grudges, any animosity. And again, it's trailing along with me. And now I'm impacting different people in different ways that, and they had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. And it's like they say, hurt people,
Yeah.
and people who don't know any better because of what they've been taught, because of what, their the greats taught them, and it's like you have this whole line of what's supposed to be, and you come to our generation really, and I want to say that really it is our generation that's kind of like waking up to things and waking
Yeah.
up to the fact of I need help,
Yeah.
waking up to the fact that my child may need help,
Yeah.
making, waking up to the fact that things that I've learned, just what is normal,
Right.
what is normal now. And
Yeah.
so when you come into yourself and you start to understand, like, trauma is real, you know,
Hmm.
the grief is real, losing yourself is real, the different levels that you go through in life, you're always going to end up losing some part of you.
Yes.
You take a little bit with you that's going to serve you for the next chapter, and you leave the rest behind, right?
Yes.
And that's just a part of growth.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the relational things that you deal with, and the relational grief, like, okay, you're coming to me because you're having this grieving, you're going through this grieving process from your
Yeah.
relationship. Let's
Yeah.
figure out what part you need to keep and what part you need to let go. What
Right.
part was really
Right.
your fault? What part do you need to work on? And
Mhm.
the rest of it, you need to be able to hand it over and let other people take their stuff.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of those things where when it comes to the older generation too, where people hold on because it's like, oh, I don't want to be disrespectful. I was
Yeah.
taught to, the yes ma'am and yes sir syndrome thing that goes on. It's like, yeah, you have to have that level of respect and you have to have that level of boundary, but you
Right.
also have to remember that now you're an adult. And when they were
Hmm.
doing what they were doing to you, they didn't have a boundary. They really didn't care, or
Hmm.
whether it's because they didn't know better or because of what have you. So now you can respectfully and humbly take your stance and let
Yeah.
them know how you feel through your letter, through things of that nature, and take your
Mhm.
place so that now you can move on in peace. You don't have to
Absolutely.
worry about what their piece is,
Yeah.
because they disturbed your peace all your life.
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's shedding. I mean, you got to shed certain parts of you, right, in order for the newer, better version of you to be revealed.
Yeah,
So, yeah, you shed that old skin. Sometimes it's dead skin. Shed it off so that we can get to the new.
yeah,
We can get to the fresh, right? And
yeah.
I can work. I can walk more purposefully and where I'm supposed, in my purpose.
Yeah. And that's what grief does, no matter where it's coming from. It
Yeah,
gets you closer to your purpose. It gets you closer to understanding yourself and
yeah,
walking in your authenticity so that you
yeah,
can call in what's really supposed to be in for you.
yeah.
And so you can have that discernment of saying, this is not for me, right?
Right,
and
right.
and cutting it off sooner than later because you're not worried about people's feelings, you're not worried about breaking their heart when they're not worried about breaking yours. It's like all of these things that we've been conditioned to worry about others more than we worry about ourselves puts us
Yeah,
in therapy and puts us in positions where it's like now you got to go find yourself because you've lost yourself, so
absolutely.
what happens from here? Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we need to lose ourselves. That's the truth, right? Sometimes I gotta lose myself because now I'm forced to go find myself again.
Yeah,
And I'm not gonna find that old version of me. I'm gonna find the newer version of me,
yeah,
right? Now I can identify how I want to show up. I need to figure out what boundaries do I need to set in order for me to not lose myself anymore.
yeah,
And we're gonna constantly evolve as people. And sometimes you can't take people with you,
oh, yeah.
unfortunately. You can't.
Yeah, and that's the heartbreaking part in that too,
Yeah,
because you, especially culturally, you when people grow up in families like say Middle Eastern families,
yeah,
they are taught to be with family. You are supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. You got to take care of your elders. You got to all of these things. And it's like
mhm.
you said, when the chaos is around you, and when I'm suffering inside, how do I break out of this norm
Right.
of the culture in order to take care of myself,
Yeah.
and so really that's a big strength that people have to exercise, because
Mhm.
when you have to leave family behind or you have to leave what you've always known behind, it's
Yeah.
like you are a whole new person and you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
vulnerable to the world, you're vulnerable to experiences, um,
Yeah.
but that's just a part of growth.
It is a part of growth. I agree.
Growth.
I agree.
So tell me anything else you want to tell me about how you maneuver through your relational sessions, and just because I think what you do is so great.
Thank
I think
you.
what you do is so great. It just brings a whole different perspective to grief and how you're showing people how to show up for themselves in the world.
Absolutely. So, um, I think we hit on a lot of, a lot of tools, a lot of things, right? I think the biggest message that I want to put out there is it's okay to go to therapy, right? It's okay to show up for yourself. It is okay. And the most beautiful thing is it's all confidential. You don't have to let anybody know that you're in therapy. You don't have to let anyone know that you're getting that support if you don't want to, right? Because I'm definitely not going to tell anybody.
Right.
And so, so I think that is like the biggest message that I want to put out there. I want to give people the permission and give yourself the permission to seek out support when you need it, because you don't have to deal with things by yourself, even if you just need an outlet of just venting, right?
Yeah.
You can do that. That's more than fine as well. um, Giving yourself permission to cry. Don't hold it in, because when we hold things in, it's building up, and that's not good. When you find yourself isolating, when you find yourself your appetite has changed, whether you're overeating in order to feel something or you're under eating, right? Your sleep is interrupted some type of way. There's these intrusive thoughts happening. Those are signs that you need support. So it's okay. Get support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, One thing that we didn't touch on, and I want you to touch on briefly, is, well, for one, do you see a lot of men coming into
Mhm.
therapy? And for two, we have the other end of the spectrum of women who are kind of going through these hormonal things, going through these biological clocks that we have going on.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, again, going back to that grieving what we never had,
Yeah.
so we're wanting to have children. We're wanting to, men are wanting to show up more for the women. They're wanting to, are you finding more of that coming into your space?
I am, especially when it comes to men, but most of the men is because the individuals around them have told them like, hey, you need to go to therapy, right? And so that's kind of what make them seek out therapy. Whereas most women, they're just coming because, hey, they feel like they need to come.
Yeah,
But men, I think, or some men, right, need more, I guess, of that green light from the people around them to say, hey, you know what, therapy might be good for you. Go to therapy. Or even them having friends that's in therapy. They're saying, hey, I'm in therapy and this is how it helped me. This is how it is helping me. And so you start seeing more men come to therapy because of that as well. So I think the more that it becomes normalized, the more men we will start to see in therapy moving forward,
yeah,
right? There's a lot of social media pages that's dedicated to supporting men going to therapy. So again, I think the word is getting out and how it impacts others, or how it's impacting people's lives in general. And so I think that that is, it's helping with the increase in more men coming to therapy,
yeah.
right? It takes a lot of strength to go into therapy. It really does. So I don't want it to be looked at as a weakness. It's definitely not, a weakness. It's more strength than anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I like how you said normalized, but it's like it is normalized. People just aren't talking about it. So,
Yeah.
like you said, social media is putting out there on the platform, like, hey, there's this group you can join, and there's a lot of us in here. Come on, let me help you find one, right?
Right.
So being able to express that and like you said, letting it know it is normal and
Yeah.
it is normalized. People just aren't. They're just being very secretive about it. You know.
Right. Right.
Um,
And that's
no,
too.
go ahead.
It's okay to be confidential about it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Right. Um, okay, so tell us any new projects or anything that you have coming up here that we should know about.
I wanted to hit on the second part of your question too,
Oh, yeah,
with
go
the
ahead.
biological clocks. That's a big one, right? That is a huge one because it is a societal pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we hear all over, whether you watch Married to Medicine or you watch one of the reality show or any reality show almost, you are on social media, there's this big push and pressure that, hey, if you're over 35 and you get pregnant, it's considered a geriatric pregnancy,
Right.
right?
That's so insulting, right?
It is.
So
It is.
insulting.
Why we have to refer to it as that? But
Right. Like, it's
the
not when
beauty.
I'm 60.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's God's plan,
Yeah.
right? He also has created avenues for people who, if you're feeling that type of pressure, you can go talk to a healthcare professional about different options that may, be helpful to you if that's something that you want. But sometimes it's a pressure that you feel like you should have. Just because it's this whole get married, have children, just kind of that's the normal in life,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's walk looks differently, and so I think finding ways to maneuver through the societal pressure and giving yourself permission to say, you know what, it might not be that time right now, and that's okay. That is okay. You don't have to go with societal pressures. You really don't. And I think having people around you, we go back to that emotional support system, right?
Yeah.
Having those people around you to um, validate those feelings, right?
Yeah.
That don't have to be a normal life for everyone
Yeah,
to have.
definitely.
Yeah, like it don't. And sometimes it could be, and I'm not saying dogs or puppies or cats or whatever is the same as a baby, right? I'm not saying that whatsoever. But sometimes it's just we have the feeling or desire to take care of something. We have the desire for something to need us. And so it could be just going, getting a pet for a while,
Yeah.
right? Continuing to pray about it,
Yeah.
finding things that's going to fill that certain void that may be within you. But again, the societal pressure is real and it
Yeah.
will take some people down, but it will take
And
you down.
making sure that you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Not just because your family is pressuring you. Oh, it's time for me to have a grandchild, or you're the only one who doesn't have a child. It's like you
Mhm.
get that pressure too. And the reality shows. I am watching Married at First Sight right now.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And the lady on there, one of the young ladies on there, she was saying, every time I get that feeling of wanting to have a child, I just go buy a dog, right? And she's like, I have four dogs. She has four dogs, and she's like, she's breeding. She's a breeder too for the dogs.
Okay.
So that's, yeah, you can go get you a pet, but just make sure
Yeah.
you're doing it for the right reasons, and
Absolutely.
and also being okay if it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's that part where that as women we have many avenues that we can take in order to have a child, whether if
Yeah.
it's in vitro or adoption or gestational carriers, things of that nature. So there's
Yeah.
different avenues that you could take, but really having that serious conversation with you before you start going to extremes, having that serious conversation with yourself and saying, am I going to be okay if this never happens for me? It's
Right.
not going to be okay if I don't have this husband or this partner with me that's raising this child. And
Yeah.
on top of that, is my child going to need therapy because there's not a second parent in the home? So
Right.
there's all these things that you have to think about before you decide to make these bigger decisions. And are you capable of carrying them out in a
Mhm.
sufficient way that's going to set you and your child up for success, right?
Absolutely.
As much
Yeah.
as you can anyway, because you can't control everything.
Cannot. You cannot. So I 100% agree with everything that you just said. And I wanted to make sure that I hit on what you mentioned with family putting pressure, right?
Yeah,
That is huge, right?
yeah,
Um, I think that's where it comes in, where now I have to set that boundary with family,
mhm,
right? If that's something that's making you uncomfortable or is putting pressure on you, speak up. There's a way to deliver that message without it being disrespectful. But it's valid. It's very valid for you to honor how you feel
yeah,
and how that makes you feel.
yeah,
So setting
definitely.
that boundary, setting a healthy boundary. I don't care who you are, parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin, asking those questions. First off, it is very insensitive, to be honest.
Hmm.
It's very insensitive. But definitely not being afraid to set that boundary and let people know, hey, this is how it makes me feel. I need you not to say that to me anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So
And
yeah.
on that note too, it's like you don't know what that person is dealing with. They
Yeah.
could have fibroids, they can have, all of these different sorts of hormonal issues or body mechanical issues that is prohibiting them from conceiving.
Right.
And so when you do ask those questions, it's like you said, be sensitive about it or don't announce it. But two, not that your business is supposed to be everyone's business, but sometimes if you don't let one person know or somebody know that you're having these issues, it's going to keep coming at you. So then you're going to be like, don't be asking me these questions and don't, and it's like, but oh, we didn't know that you have cysts on your ovaries. We didn't know that, so it's having that people on the outside really just need to mind their business and be respectful,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. But coming to a therapist as yourself, because this
Mhm.
does come up in relationships. It's
Yeah.
a big thing in relationships. Will give
Right.
them the language that they need and the confidence that they need to discuss it in the right way, so that they're respected in that boundary and in that space.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely.
So, anything else you want to enlighten us with?
Um, I think, from what our conversation that we've had so far, I think it has been very intentional. I think we have really put a stamp on, how therapy can be very impactful, how it can be very helpful. Other than that, I mean, I have an Instagram page where, I go on, I post, inspirational type of posts. So you can follow me at embrace the number two empower underscore PLLC. Again, embrace to empower underscore PLLC. And, follow me for some inspirational posts. If you are interested in receiving any kind of therapy from me, please send me a DM on embrace to empower underscore PLLC on Instagram. I believe my information should be posted here as well. I believe I sent you my website. So you can go on the website and reach me if you are interested in any kind of therapy.
Awesome, Lakendra. So, yes, all of her information will be listed at the bottom of our podcast, and you'll have all her contact information. She has a wealth of knowledge in these areas, especially when it comes to relational things and just getting you to that other side of where you need to be and how you need to show up in relation. And so I do ask that you guys reach out to her. And she's in the DFW area, and I think that she's a great resource for us all. So I want to thank you for coming to episode 6 of the Shadow Box and just coming in and coming alongside of us and sharing these moments and getting all this information so that we can continue to get you to the other side and functioning in your grief, functioning in your shadow, functioning in your purpose.